Sloppy success, right? Is take some action.
Totally.
Something's going to happen because so many people are waiting for the perfect moment. They don't want to be offended, hurt, rejected, embarrassed, and all that. So,
Yeah.
yeah, be a little bit more bold in your life. Now, you have done some really cool stuff. You've been personally invited on stage with Gary Vaynerchuk. That's not everybody can say that.
A lot of people cannot say that. You're right. I've been fortunate to be with some really a couple of really big folks. Gary was one of them, and if you want, I'm happy to tell you the story of how that went down. It was kind of very Gary Vaynerchuk esque the way it went down. But yeah, I was with him a couple of years ago in Miami at his Agent 2021 conference.
And what happened?
So, I reached out to Gary. It was one of the I'm a fan of his. I listen to his stuff, and I know he's all about like just pick up the phone and like just call people, just do it. Don't worry about it. So I didn't pick up the phone, but I DM'd him on a couple different platforms and said, "Hey man, I'd love to have you on my show. You're a huge inspiration in my podcast." And he didn't write me back. But a couple of days later, I get an email from Vayner Media, and they're like, "Hey, we're having this event, Agent 2021 in Miami, and Gary would love to have you come and speak at the event." So it was very strange. He didn't reach out personally, but his team did. And then I had a chance to chat with him, and I was there, and like I said, share the stage with him. So it was a really cool, kind of surreal situation to just. But it kind of, it really lends to the point that if you take action and just do things you'll kick up dust. Like things will happen as a result of that. It's like the puddle in the pond. There's a ripple effect to everything you do, and you don't know what it's going to be. So go do things and watch that ripple effect.
Sloppy success, right? Is take some action.
Totally.
Something's going to happen because so many people are waiting for the perfect moment. They don't want to be offended, hurt, rejected, embarrassed, and all that. So,
Yeah.
yeah, be a little bit more bold in your life. It'll go a long way. I agree with that.
100%.
So you're a real estate guy, and you're a podcaster, a speaker, and a lot of people today are, I would say, wanting to do any one of those things and do it well. So let's talk about how awesome you are. This is not a time for you to be bashful. Brag on yourself a little bit of how you've done really well in those different areas. I'd love to hear it.
Okay, yeah, sure. And everything, like you said, sloppy success. It's not without my share of mistakes. But in real estate, I did some things really well, some things really not so well. In the beginning, when I decided I wanted to be a real estate investor, it took me 5 years to get the courage and feel like I had enough information to actually do it. And that I regret that. But once I did it and took action, I got kind of addicted to being an entrepreneur. I got addicted to the ability to control my own destiny, to take control of my own life. In my younger years, and I was in corporate for 20 years, I did not start off as a young entrepreneur, but in my younger years, I kind of let the river take me, where it wanted to. I wasn't directing much of what was happening to me. I was sort of going along for the ride. And at some point, I just decided I was going to take control of my own life, and I was going to kind of be the author of my own book. And I started down this real estate path. And one thing I have on my side is I'm not afraid of risk. I'm very comfortable with taking risks. And so I started taking massive action and not taking a lot of necessarily risk, but taking a lot of action. And a lot of people consider that risky, right? I started making offers on houses. How scary is that, right? And I had to raise money and find where I was going to get the money to buy these houses. And once I bought a house and started renovating it, like you see on TV, these house flippers, I had one. I was still making offers. Like I was out there making tons of offers and really trying to make something happen for myself. And I did that for a while, and I had some success locally in my market. I was considered a very successful real estate investor. I was speaking at these real estate meetups, and I was, getting in front of the group and talking, and people were coming and seeking my advice. And I felt like I had really done something big. Then I realized I sort of had created a new job for myself. As much as I liked it, everything depended on me, and I really wasn't sure how to get out of that situation. So around that time, I started my podcast because I wanted to help give back a little bit. When I started out in real estate, I was nervous to ask questions. I honestly felt self-conscious about not knowing a lot of things. So I kind of held my tongue and I had to learn things the hard way because I was afraid to ask for help. And so I created my podcast as a way to answer questions that I know for a fact new investors have. Things that they're afraid to ask, and also things they don't even know to ask. They don't know them yet. So I created the podcast for that reason. And in doing that, right, in creating that podcast and putting myself out there, a lot of people came into my life that changed my life. And a few of those were other investors from around the country that I had not had the opportunity to meet because they weren't in my local market, but they heard the podcast, or they were introduced to me by someone who did listen to the podcast. And I started talking to some of these folks from around the country who were doing much bigger things than I was doing. Their vision of what they could achieve was far beyond what I was thinking at the time that I could achieve. And so I always tell people, when you're standing on the ground and it's a clear day and there's no trees or buildings, you know, you could probably see for a mile or two. I don't know how long the human eye can see. But if you get on top of a skyscraper, you can see so much farther. And I feel like when I had started surrounding myself with the right people, I was able to see so much further. I could see as far as they could see or beyond. And so the podcast helped me help people, but honestly, just a happy coincidence. I was able to help myself by being introduced and having people brought into my life that I never would have met otherwise. And that's been huge for me. And that success has now given me the opportunity to write a book. It's given me an opportunity to be comfortable. Like, if I would have reached out to Gary Vaynerchuk and he would have said, "Hey, let's come talk at Agent 2021," I would have never done it if I had not gotten to that point in my life by starting the podcast, meeting the people I met, talking in front of RIAs because I had a little bit of a momentum in my own market, and then speaking on kind of increasingly bigger stages. It's all a progression, but it all starts with that decision, the decision to start my real estate investing company, and then the decision to start my podcast. And everything is sort of a wellspring from that point.
Yeah, and Just Start Real Estate is the name of your podcast, and it makes sense because it's literally what you did. You got started, and then you got momentum, and then you got to meet some different people. Your confidence went up. And I think a lot of people don't recognize that. They think that people like you did it overnight. You took 5 years, Frick, to just think about it and to poke at it and look at it and circle the wagons until you made a decision. But it's often like that for a lot of people. You started with single family homes. Tell us a little bit what your portfolio looks like today.
Okay, so I started off, and my journey is I've taken some twists and turns. I started off as a house flipper, and I did that for about 6 years. Flipped houses. I was flipping about 20 to 24 houses a year at one point at the end of those 6 years. And I had a little a life business altering event, and some folks that I relied on in my business kind of let me down, to say the least. And there's a whole story in there too. We could talk forever about that. But the bottom line is I was left without a contracting crew, somebody who could do my flips, who could do the work inside the house. And the realtor that I was relying heavily on at the time to bring me deals and to help me vet them out and give me some idea of what they would sell for at the end of the day really kind of let me down in a big way that wasn't recoverable. So I was faced with the necessity or the need to find a new team, but I was still getting deals in organically and through some of my own efforts. So when that happened, I switched my model over. I stopped flipping houses so much and started wholesaling because I didn't have a crew. I didn't have a realtor. I was getting opportunities, and I would just take those opportunities and sell them off to other house flippers and landlords. So I started wholesaling at that point. And that's about the time that I joined a mastermind, and I started meeting some folks that were farther down the road than I was, and they could kind of give me the benefit of hindsight. Can you imagine if you had the benefit of hindsight? You know, when you're starting something out, you could have someone who'd already been there and done that tell you everything that went right and wrong in their business that you're trying to emulate. So that's what I did. And when I did that, that's when everything took off. And that's really kind of where my book starts, is at that point when I switched my model, joined a mastermind, surrounded myself with the right people, and everything started to take off for me. And my business went from doing a couple of deals a month to doing 10 to 14 deals every single month. And everything that I did is in the book, and it's people might be surprised. It's not a book filled with software and tools and things that I use in my business, although those are important. It was really more about a mindset shift from, and I had this weird circular logic before I started hiring people, and it was that I'm not big enough to hire someone. My company is too small to hire, but I'll never get big enough to hire without help. So it's like this weird circular logic. So when I changed my mindset and realized not only did I need to start building my team, I needed systems and processes that were repeatable, that I could train people toward, because at that point I was doing a couple deals a month, and every deal I did was a brand new adventure for me. I would go out and I would pick new materials, and I had no process. It was just like I was restarting a new business every time I did it. So once I got around people who had a little bit more of a business minded approach to their company, I started creating systems and processes and bringing people onto my team that were better than me at certain things. And I always tell people, a question I get all the time is, how do I know who to hire first? How do I know what position to hire for, how to hire? And I always say, look at your business and determine and try to be objective and say, where are the bottlenecks? Where am I holding up the progress of my business? Where are things sort of like getting clogged? And also, what do I not like doing? Because what you don't like doing in your business, chances are you're bad at it. You're not doing a good job. And that's probably where the bottlenecks are happening too, frankly. So for me in my business, my first hire was someone that I call transaction coordinator. A transaction coordinator in my business takes all the paperwork and all the details of each deal, gets them to the title company, and works with the title company to get that deal to the closing table. I am not good at that role because I don't like details. I'm not a detail-oriented person. So things slip through the cracks with me, and I forget to call people back. And so I needed someone to help me with the details, and that was the first person I hired. Second person I hired was a salesperson. I'm not the best salesperson in the world. I'm competent. I'm okay. Like, I'm passable. But a truly great salesperson is a completely different thing than someone who does it because it's their business and they have to, because it's a seat that they have to fill. But when you fill a seat with someone who belongs in that seat, wow, things can really change. And that's what happened for me.